Everything you need to know about Julius Caesar, Act 2, Scene 1, Part 2. We are picking right up where all the conspirators have come over to see Brutus before they go to Caesar's house to collect him and walk him to the Senate to be assassinated. So the conspirators come in: Cassius, Casca, Decius, Cinna, Metellus, Cimber, and Trebonius. Cassius says to Brutus, "I think we are too bold upon your arrest. In other words, we're here too early. We're bugging you. Good morrow, Brutus, do we trouble you?" Brutus says, "I've been up at this hour awake all night. Know I these men that come along with you?" He wants to know who all these guys are. "Yes, every man of them, and no man here but honors you, and every one doth wish you had but that opinion of yourself, which every noble Roman bears of you. We hope you know how awesome you are, Brutus," is basically what he's saying to him. This is Trebonius. He's welcome hither. This is Decius Brutus. He is welcome too. So they're all being welcomed and introduced. So we know the key players here in the conspiracy. This Casca, this Cinna, and this Metellus Cimber. They are all welcome. What watchful cares do interpose themselves betwixt your eyes and night? What is it that's keeping you up and that brings you here? Shall I entreat a word? And so Cassius pulls him aside and they have a conversation together, and we assume that Cassius is filling Brutus in on what they're going to be doing. And while that's happening, all the other conspirators are having this conversation then. And it's kind of weird unless you kind of understand what's going on. And the film actually helps with this. Here lies the east. Doth not the day break here? No. Oh, pardon, sir, it doth. And yon gray lines that fret the clouds are messengers of day. So they're like, this is the east, and this is where the sun comes up in the east, right? And Casca says, no. And so Casca says, you shall confess that you are both deceived. Here, as I point my sword, the sun arises, which is a great way growing on the south, or towards the south, weighing the youthful season of the year, considering the youthful season of the year. Some 2 months hence, up higher toward the north, he first presents his fire, and the high east stands as the capital directly here. So this is an interesting picture. In the movie, he points his sword towards Brutus and Cassius, meaning like what they're about to embark on is going to bring a new dawn to Rome. Now that makes sense, right? So the metaphorical sunrise is Brutus and Cassius leading this movement to rid the darkness of Caesar and bring a new day. That's the basic idea here. So at this point then Brutus and Cassius come back. Brutus says, "Give me your hands all over one by one." They're going to like shake on it, right? Cassius says, "And let us swear our resolution." So he wants to say, pinky promise. Let's make a promise that we're going to do this. Brutus, and this is a pattern that's going to be set up where Cassius says something and Brutus contradicts him. And each time it's interesting what happens, because who's the conspiracy leader up to this point? It's Cassius. But now Brutus is on board. And remember, the whole conversation about Brutus throughout this play has been how honorable and respected Brutus is. So see how his influence now impacts the direction of the conspirators. Brutus says, "No, not an oath. Don't make a promise. If not the face of men, the sufferance of our souls, the times of abuse." In other words, it's not the situation at hand that makes people sad, that our souls are suffering, that Caesar is being abusive. "If these motives be motives weak, break off betimes, and every man hence to his idle bed. So let high-sighted tyranny range on till each man drop by lottery." In other words, until each man kind of at his turn or chance dies. So if the reasons that we have aren't good enough to do this, then we should just go home. And when we die, we die. "But if these, as I'm sure they do, bear fire enough to kindle cowards and to steal with valor the melting spirits of women, then, countrymen, what need we any spur but our own cause to prick us to redress," right? So we should have a good enough cause that weak-willed people are still willing to step up and do something. "What other bond than secret Romans that we have spoke the word and will not palter?" Do we need anything else but to say that we're going to do this? "And what other oath than honesty to honesty engage?" Like we've already pledged it personally. It's a matter of honor. Do we need to say, "I promise" as well? "That this shall be, or we will fall for it. Swear priests and cowards and men cautelous," meaning cautious. "Old feeble carrions, decaying flesh, and suffering souls that welcome wrongs." The kind of people that need a promise are weak. They're, cowardly and old and cautious and, all these negatives that have to have a promise to do something. Unto bad causes swear such creatures as men doubt. But do not stain the even virtue of our enterprise, or the insuppressive metal. Metal means like what it's made of our spirits. To think that or our cause or our performance did need to know. Don't think that the honorable thing we're doing needs a pinky promise, is the way Brutus is trying to portray this, right? When every drop of blood that every Roman bears and nobly bears is guilty of a several bastardy, in other words, is no true Roman, if he do break the smallest particle of any promise that hath passed from him, right? It is not noble or fitting for a Roman to have to make a promise. Cassius says, but what of Cicero? Now he's going on to another situation. Shall we sound him? Shall we ask him if he wants to join us? I think he will stand very strong with us. So Cassius is asking, should we have this other guy join us? Cassius says, let us not leave him out. Cinna, no, by no means. So all the guys want Cinna and Cicero involved. Metellus says, let us have him, for his silver hairs will purchase us a good opinion. Silver hairs meaning he has gray hair, he's old, so because of his age, people think he's wiser, and that will make us look better. It will buy men's voices to commend our deeds, and it shall be said his judgment ruled our hands. Our youths in wildness shall no whit or not the least bit appear, all buried in his gravity. So his old, presence and his wisdom will kind of make it so that our youthfulness won't be a factor. In other words, his age will help us seem more mature. All right, Brutus then, name him not. Let us not break with him. Let us not confide in him. For he will never follow anything that other men begin. So Brutus is contradicting all of them because he says Cicero, unless he's the boss, he's not going to follow. And so Cassius says, then leave him out. Indeed, he is not fit. So now, just because Brutus said, forget him, they all change their mind. And now Decius asks, shall no man else be touched but only Caesar? And he doesn't mean exactly touched, right? He means touched inside with a knife. That's what he means by touched, right? Cassius responds to this. Decius, well urged. I think it is not meet Mark Antony, so well beloved of Caesar, should outlive Caesar. So let's kill Antony while we're at it. We shall find of him a shrewd contriver. He's a schemer. He's going to be sneaky. And as you know his means, if he improve them, in other words, the resources that he has, if he strengthens them, may well stretch so far as to annoy, meaning to harm, right? To get vengeance on us all. Which to prevent, let's not let him get back at us, let Antony and Caesar fall together. So here's kind of the third suggestion that they have, and now Brutus responds to it in the same way. Our course will seem too bloody, Caius Cassius, to cut the head off and then hack the limbs like wrath and death and envy afterwards. In other words, we don't want to seem like we're overdoing it because we're cutting Caesar down. In other words, we're cutting the head off, and then once the head is gone, we're attacking the body that's left over, and that seems like a little too much, like we're being angry and hateful. For Antony is but a limb of Caesar. So if we cut off the head, we don't have to worry about the limbs, right? Let's be sacrificers, but not butchers, Caius. So this is all about how Brutus wants this to be portrayed honorable and above board and the right thing to do. Like we're making a sacrifice here for Rome. We're not butchers that are just hacking people up. We all stand up against the spirit of Caesar, and in the spirit of men there is no blood. We don't like what Caesar represents and what he's doing. Oh, then that we could come by Caesar's spirit and not dismember Caesar. In other words, if we could stop his tyranny without killing him, that would be the best way to do it. But alas, Caesar must bleed for it. Brutus knows there's no other way. And gentle or honorable or noble friends, let's kill him boldly, but not wrathfully, not with hatred and anger, but with boldness. Let's carve him as a dish fit for the gods. This is an interesting simile, which is a comparison using like or as, like a dish fit for the gods. Not hew him, which means to chop up like with an axe, as a carcass fit for hounds. We're serving him up for the gods. We're not trashing him for the dogs, is what he wants to say. And let our hearts, as subtle masters do, stir up their servants to an active rage, and after seem to chide him. Chide is to scold them. In other words, our hearts are getting our bodies to do something, and then we're going to feel bad that we had to do it. This shall make our purpose necessary and not envious, which so appearing to the common eyes, we shall be called purgers. A purger is like a healer or someone that gets rid of the bad stuff, not murderers. So he wants it to look like they're doing this for Rome. It's honorable. It's the right thing. And for Mark Antony, think not of him, for he can do no more than Caesar's arm when Caesar's head is off. So he is arguing to not kill Antony. Cassius says, yet I fear him, for the ingrafted, the deeply rooted love he bears to Caesar. Brutus again comes back at him. Alas, good Cassius, do not think of him. If he loves Caesar, all that he can do is to himself. Take thought and die for Caesar. In other words, he's just going to be sad. He's going to be so sad he won't do anything. And that were much he should, for he is given to sports, to wildness, and much company. He probably won't be that sad because he's a party animal, is what he thinks. Trebonius, there is no fear in him. Let him not die, for he will live and laugh at this hereafter. So now they've all changed to follow Brutus again. Then the clock strikes. That's interesting because there were no clocks then when the play is taking place. So this is what's called an anachronism, where Shakespeare's put this in here and it's not really fitting for the time period. Brutus, peace, count the clock. Cassius, the clock hath stricken 3. 'Tis time to part. So they're going to leave now and go to Caesar's house to walk him, escort him. Cassius says, but it is doubtful yet whether Caesar will come forth today or no. He is superstitious grown of late, quite from the main opinion he held once of fantasy of dreams and ceremonies. So they're worried because Caesar has become, a little superstitious, and he used to reject all that stuff. But now he seems to be a little preoccupied. It may be these apparent prodigies, the unaccustomed terror of this night, and the persuasion of his augurers. An augurer is like a priest or like someone who can interpret signs. So Cassius is recognizing all the weird stuff in the storm that Caesar might be suspicious or terrified of if they're signs, right? The persuasions of his augurers may hold him from the capital today, because all these things happening might keep him away. Decius responds, never fear that. If he be so resolved, I can oversway him. I'm going to change his mind. For he loves to hear that unicorns may be betrayed with trees, and bears with glasses, and elephants with holes, lions with toils, and men with flatterers. So in other words, he's giving examples of how certain animals are tricked and are trapped. Men are trapped by flatterers, lions with toils, and that would be like a net or a snare, and all of those are examples for that. But Decius is going to say that Caesar hates flatterers, and by saying that he hates flatterers, he's going to be flattered that Decius recognizes that, right? He says he does, being then most flattered. Let me work, for I can give his humor the true bent, and I will bring him to the capital. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to manipulate him and get him there. Cassius says, nay, all of us will be there to fetch him. Brutus, by the 8th hour, is at the uttermost, so let's all be there at 8. Caius, be that the uttermost, and fail not then. Metellus, Caius Ligarius doth bear Caesar hard, who rated him for speaking well of Pompey. He has a grudge. This guy Caius Ligarius is another one they're thinking of joining. Brutus says, now, good Metellus, go along by him. He loves me well, and I have given him reasons. Send him but hither, and I'll fashion him. I'll mold him. I'll shape him. So Brutus is like, yeah, go get that guy and send him over, and I'll try to convince him. Cassius, the morning comes upon us. We'll leave you, Brutus, and friends, disperse yourselves, but all remember what you have said and show yourselves true Romans. So let's step up and let's do this. We'll meet at 8 o'clock at Caesar's house. Brutus, good gentlemen, look fresh and merrily. Let not our looks put upon our purpose. Don't look all sneaky and suspicious, but bear it as our Roman actors do, with untired spirits and formal constancy. In other words, go act normal. And so good morrow to you, everyone. They all leave, except for Brutus. So again, he says, boy, Lucius, fast asleep. So he's calling a servant again. It is no matter. Enjoy the honey-heavy dew of slumber. Thou hast no figures nor no fantasies, which busy care draws in the brains of men. So he's saying his servant is simple-minded and doesn't really have worries, unlike all of these men that are involved in this situation.